lovely backdrop you got there.
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's a typical green school Bali backdrop. I don't think you could find almost anywhere on our campus that doesn't really look like this. Actually, this is probably one of the less impressive ones. Right now, I'm in the sort of parent co-working space at Green School. So I've hid from my teachers and peers and come here to talk to you. So you can probably hear perhaps a band in the background and some other stuff.
Yeah, there's a bit of a sweeping sound, and hopefully that's not that sounds like actual background noise. So, but that's all authentic. So
yeah, well, you get the whole Green School image then, the whole experience.
Awesome. So look, thanks for joining. So are you literally in school today? You're on a break, are you? Or
I am literally in school today. So, well, actually, I'm not in break. This is my class. So,
okay.
I'm a senior student now. Graduate in June. And once we the system we have at Green School is credit based. So once we sort of move towards the end of graduation, I've fulfilled all of my credit requirements, which means I am technically already qualified to graduate. And so I have these sort of study periods where I can sit down with parents. I can sit down and work on different projects. So a lot of the learning we do here is project based, and the closer you sort of get to graduation, the more time you have for these projects. Which is also sort of how Dungbeetle started, right? How I started on this journey is, there's time to let your creativity sort of take you away, which is really nice.
Cool. Well, look, we're here to talk about Dungbeetle, obviously, and for me, having plenty of experience in that kind of initial startup phase, which I suppose is where you're at with Dungbeetle, and we'll get you to talk about it in a minute. But even before we do, how are you juggling all this? Because being what are you, 17? I mean, you're
just turned 18.
Just turned 18, senior student, trying to presumably deal with all the pressures of school life, and at the same time jumping into a startup. But yeah, tell us how you're dealing with it all. But also at the same time, let's give our audience give us a brief on Dungbeetle, the work you do, what it's all about.
I mean, yeah, sure. Let's start off with Dungbeetle. So let's start off with Greenstone, actually. So when you graduate Green School, instead of doing tons of different exams and sitting down for hours and then memorizing entire history books, what we do is we work on something we call Greenstone, which is sort of like a capstone project that students in year 12 work on the entirety of the year. And then we pitch it in 34 days in front of 600 people at a sort of TEDx-style event. And so there it is. That's actually how I'm juggling it, right? There's really room for being your own sort of time organizer, and I've managed to put a lot of my efforts and focus towards working on this project. So my Greenstone, my capstone project, started out as Dungbeetle, started out as a Greenstone project, and pretty quickly I realized that rather than just do a fancy research paper and a good presentation, I can have a much bigger impact if I started a company. And so I pitched it to a few Green School parents, one of which is sitting next to me right now, actually. And so we started a startup. And what we do at Dungbeetle is we work with underestimated and underappreciated but strong eco-warriors, especially since we're based in Indonesia, here in Bali and Indonesia. And there are loads of those. We have 40 million farmers across Indonesia that live for less than $4 a day. And they're super small scale. We probably have more than 40 million farmers. We just know of 40 million small scale farmers, right? And so the problem with these small scale eco projects, and the problem with the farmers is, since they're so small scale, very few companies are trying to address them and help them, right? Obviously, there's a huge potential for good doing there, huge green potential. And so we work with small scale companies, and we have access to a lot of small scale companies here at Green School that sort of have these small scale solutions for Indonesian farmers, for small scale reforestation in Bali, things like that, that typically don't have the volume or the budget to get carbon standard certified. And so, long story short, our solution to the high costs, avoiding the high costs associated with carbon consultants and sort of getting the typical way of getting your carbon credit certified is using little IoT devices. So, one thing we do, which is actually helping the Indonesian farmers, is we work with this company called Shoko. And Shoko is founded by this fantastic guy, Takashi, who's a Japanese eco-scientist. He has PhD from Sweden, went to Oxford. He really knows his stuff, widely recognized. And he's made Indonesia's first truly small-scale biodigester. So biodigesters are these things that we install with these local farmers, and they put their cow manure into one end. Out of the other end comes organic fertilizer and biogas. And so the farmer no longer uses chemical fertilizer, and the farmer, no longer uses LPG-powered fossil fuel gas, or at least they sort of, diminish their usage a lot. And so what we do is we have these little flow meters on these biodigesters. And so rather than have someone go and do a sample to sort of, these things exist, verification, we use these flow meters to send live data of, is the farmer using the biodigester? How much biogas is the farmer using? How much organic fertilizer is he getting out of it? We can see the pressure, we can see the flow. And so what we do with this data is we build these little dashboards, and we let people actually track it in real time. And so we really focus on the small scale projects, right? There are loads of solutions for big companies, loads of solutions for people who already have a lot of money. But the part of the market that's really undersupplied, I find, is the Dungbeetles. They're sort of left down here on the financial level, digging around the dung, and no one's really talking about them, and they don't have the platform to do it themselves. Yeah.
Cool. Good. Well, firstly, yeah, I mean, great little pitch of the business, but I suppose initially before that, I mean, the fact you're doing this at school, I mean, who knows? This may take the Green School to kind of, open up their program even more and make it into a kind of mini accelerator, because you're kind of
you could hope so.
You're at that, or incubator rather. You're kind of at that stage where you're incubating the business, and hopefully through this process that you're running with the school, it will, bring funding in. But blockchain, I want to talk about the blockchain element. It's clearly a structural part of your startup in terms of how you're taking it to market. Do you see it as an absolute a necessity in terms of a foundation of what you're doing, or do you just see it as, solving a certain problem that you could solve in a number of different ways?
That's a good question. I think it's a combination of the two. Often people ask me, so are you a blockchain company? And the answer is always no, we're not a blockchain company. Blockchain is a tool that we use to verify data and verify ownership, and make it transparent, right? So one of the really big issues that the voluntary carbon markets is facing is no one really knows what's going on, especially the consumers, the people who pay these companies to do this carbon sequestering. They have no way of really knowing, what the actual data is. If you have a plot of 20,000 hectares of forest, how do you know what exact trees your 2 carbon credits, so 2 tons of carbon, are coming from? You don't. So it's all based on estimates. And so blockchain for us is a tool to verify, project existence, and more, or just make the data transparent. So actually, it's an ongoing tech development stage that we're having. Is how do we integrate blockchain as much as possible, but how do we dumb it down enough for completely normal people to understand what's going on? Blockchain is one of those things that is, much like carbon credits, made out to be something it's not. People hype it up. People use terms and buzzwords that make it seem more complex than it is. And so if you can sort of explain it in really simple terms, and make it super easy to understand, I find that's the sort of sweet spot where things get done. And so blockchain serves as a really nice tool to be able to get that transparency.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is having done, kind of 4 years and still connected with a startup in that space. It's part of the problem is blockchain. It's a valuable tool, if you want to call it a tool, but talking about it makes it less valuable, and it's almost being able to just convey the benefit rather than the feature of it to customers. Yes. But I certainly, looking at your pitch deck and some of the stuff you did, I thought that was done well. Going back to this grassroots kind of, I don't know if that's the right expression, but these Dungbeetle projects. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at what you're doing and how you communicated it there, it feels to me like you're, somewhat circumventing these standards, which are good things. We need standards. We need structure around this marketplace. We need to, eradicate greenwashing altogether. But what we don't want to do is, create less opportunities for these Dungbeetle type projects? Is that what you're doing, creating more of a direct path potentially for someone who wants to invest in one of these, lower range projects, one of these, projects that get out into the farming communities and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the end goal is really to, provide these projects a way of actually participating in the carbon markets, right? Often, they don't have any way of participating in the markets at all. And so they'll need to grow to a certain scale where they have enough units to make it, financially viable to actually get the carbon credit certified, which can take many, many years if you're operating on such a small scale with a product that costs almost nothing and is generating no revenue. If you can't sell the carbon from a biodigester, how do you make money from it, right? The farmer can't afford the $550 it costs to install it, so it has to come out of your pocket. And that can quickly become expensive, especially if you have no revenue already. So Dungbeetle's purpose is actually just providing a way for these companies to participate in these markets. But more than that, we've found that the most authentic guys doing these projects are actually the small scale people, right? They're not making any money from it yet, so they're motivated for the right reasons. And so guys like Takashi, who could have all sorts of scientific jobs elsewhere, is struggling with a small scale startup because he's on a mission to help small scale farmers in Indonesia, and that's what he really truly cares about in his heart. And so telling his story is really valuable. So more than anything, Dungbeetle is actually a storytelling business. We tell the stories of these underestimated eco warriors. We value the co-benefits just as much as we value carbon sequestration. So carbon offsetting is obviously a huge market, and it's where the majority of money is being made. But we also care about soil biodiversity. We care about that the farmer is no longer using chemical fertilizers, which means the health of the farmland is better. The air quality in the farmer's home significantly increases, and so the farmer is less prone to diseases. And so there's loads of co-benefits that are very hard to price, that are very hard to tell the story of with the traditional carbon model and these traditional standards. So we're trying to create our own model where we can verify these eco projects in a more financially sustainable model, where we can value these co-benefits. And it's difficult. It's a difficult business to be in, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult, and I completely agree. The co-benefits are massive. Obviously, what we do is all about that. Yes, we are environmentally focused, but we're about social impact as well. We're about farming communities. We're about soil health, about crop yields. I mean, there's all these, and actually, I truly believe. Of course, there's going to be carbon removal technology out there, such as direct air capture. We're going to have these other pieces of technology, but the kind of grassroots community-based models are so important for longevity. In terms of being, I'm an investor, I want to put money in not to you, and we'll get to that in a minute, but into, I want to fund one of these projects. I might be a business. So how am I, and this is probably where I imagine the challenges and some of the roadblocks are. How are you enabling that? Blockchain can be tricky in terms of, it can be really valuable, but it can be tricky in terms of a traditional person wanting to put in $100 or however the model works. How are you getting around that? How are you solving that problem for someone who wants to invest in impact?
It's a very good question, because if you want to, we use NFTs, and when I say that, people usually roll their eyes and think of animated pages of monkeys on the internet that go for hundreds of thousands of dollars but have no real utility. No one really knows what they do. And what people sort of tend to forget is NFTs have a really nice tech aspect of a non-fungible token, which means there's only one, right? There's no replicate. You can't duplicate an NFT because it's layered on blockchain. And so we sort of distribute these NFTs, these little badges of, hey, this eco project is legitimate. We installed it. We hereby approve its existence, and we distribute these to our users, whether you're a company, whether you're a green school parent who wants to offset their flight home. And so when people have to purchase these, if they have to purchase them with crypto, either they have to be sort of a crypto nerd like me and be able to do it themselves, or I have to sit down with them and go through the purchase process. And obviously that isn't a very sustainable model. So all we're really trying to do is having separate payment methods, and then being able to send that NFT afterwards. And so we need to have some sort of onboarding where people can pay using different methods, because otherwise it becomes an unsustainable model of me having to not only introduce my own technology and explaining that to people, but also having to explain a whole other universe of blockchain and crypto. And the more you have to educate your consumer, the more time they have to put into it, the less likely they are to stay with you. And so we really have to, that's, you're completely right. It's one of the struggles is simplifying that process, which is what we're all about. So yeah.
How are you doing it? If I can drill down, what are you doing? Like a kind of concierge service, or are you just
Yeah. So right now we're low volume. We just started our pilot. Most of our customers are green school parents, which makes it incredibly easy to sort of help them. Bigger clients, companies, we're working with a few resorts here in Bali. We'll send a completely normal invoice, and then we'll send them the NFTs afterwards, and I'll help them create their wallets and stuff like that. So we're trying to minimize the blockchain exposure, as much as possible.
Cool. What's your I'm interested to know as a young lad, what's your view on the whole kind of broader environmental sustainability space in terms of the future? Do you there's government, there's business, there's individual. Do you how do you see it rolling out? I know this is a very big question, but over the next 10 years, but do you how do you see the role of startups and business within it, when you align yourselves to governments and individuals?
That's a very good question. I think right now, if you're looking, just generalizing everything, looking especially in the West and Denmark, Copenhagen, America, these places where I'm from as well, we're sort of plagued by this green disconnect. Yeah. Everyone's afraid of climate change, but no one really knows what to do about it, right? And it sort of becomes a sense of apathy towards it, and either you are completely consumed by it, or you choose to ignore it. Either way, there's no way to really take action, right? So, and the problem with that is the only way to get rid of anxiety or apathy is to do something about it and take action. And so I think that's why we're having so many eco startups and regenerative startups and green startups. And I think if we manage to create a space where we can have some really authentic people in these startups just driving it forward, I think that's going to lead. Personally, I think that's what's going to lead it. People say these things all the time. This is not my struggle. This is not my problem to really overcome. We'll let the politicians handle it. Yeah. The problem with that is it's way too slow. The good thing about a startup is it moves way faster, right? If they have a good idea, if they have a good product, they can just channel it out. And so you're seeing loads of those small scale companies, even bigger companies, really shifting their ways now. And so I see a world where startups are actually leading the way and not governments. But I could be wrong. They could have a change of mind suddenly.
No, I think, yeah. I hope you're right. I think the startup ecosystem has come incredibly long way in the last 20 years, right? It's quite different now than it was 20 years ago. Not that I wouldn't have been able to start up a business when I left school, which wasn't 20 years ago, it was longer. But it certainly wouldn't have been quite as easy, I imagine. And I suppose a segue to a question in terms of the kind of mentorship and support. Did you just go out on your own and say, hey, I'm going to start a business here, and you had the idea and then you reached out for people, or do you already have that structure? And I know Bali as well has a little bit of a kind of vibe in terms of startups, right? So
yeah, very much so.
Yeah, talk us through, because I think this is useful for anyone young thinking about starting a business. What did you go through as an individual wanting to start a business? How did you find the right team, the right mentors? Yeah.
Talk to as many people as possible is really the right, just an example is how we met each other. I was featured in an article in Eco Business. How I got featured in that article is I was introduced by the journalist who wrote it by someone at my school, right? So it becomes I met someone at my school who knows this guy, who thinks it's interesting, who writes about me. I'm introduced to you because you read it, and you post it on LinkedIn, and I get a bunch more exposure. So it's really this dominoes effect of people want to help you. If you're young, if you have a good idea, if you have a startup, you talk to especially older guys, they sort of look at you and go, I wish someone had helped me when I was that age. And there's a real, people want to help each other. So you shouldn't be too afraid of doing so. I was very afraid of going up and talking to people and just saying, hey, I got this idea and I think it's cool. What do you think? Is there any way you can help me? People tend to be scared. In terms of how I did it, I was very blessed with being at Green School. Green School has an awesome community of parents. We have a lot of parents that have been in the startup world. I mean, Tony Fidel went here. We have multiple entrepreneurial parents who started businesses and then moved to Bali with the families to sort of take a year of taking it still and then end up staying here for multiple years. So what I did was I started talking. I started talking in that community. I started talking to Green School parents, and pretty quickly I found this guy, Luke Jansen. He's sitting next to me now, actually. He started Tiger Spike company back in the day, and grew it to 300 people across a number of countries with $50 million in revenue, and later sold it. Right, he actually came here to Bali with his family so that his kids could go to Green School. Same with my parents; they did the same thing. And so talking to him, we sort of had the same idea at the same time, and it worked great. And so he said, let's start a company together. And so that's a very unique case. I think it's rare that you sort of come across someone who's willing to start a company with a 17-year-old as the CEO. But we sort of ended up doing it, and it's going pretty well. So talk to as many people as possible.
Yeah, network is massive. Hey, you're right. I mean, I must have seen I read your article. I think I get a regular email from EcoBusiness, so I must have seen it then, and we chatted on LinkedIn. But yeah, network is everything. So, I mean, on that note, people may be listening now, maybe looking, where are you guys at in terms of stage? What are you looking for? What kind of support do you need in terms of an organization today, a startup? Yeah, talk us through what stage you're at and what you're looking for next, because there may be people on here, maybe people listening that can help you on the next part of your journey.
Yeah, so we're very early stage. We're currently raising seed. We recently were in Singapore to pitch to a number of VC firms, and now we're sort of also looking into a number of angels, because there are some really good angels here in the Green School network that obviously have a special interest in environment and nature, green tech companies that we sort of fit into that box of. So we're very early stage. We are launching our new dashboards to let you track all the data live just this month. So very, very soon. And so there's a number of things you can do to support. You don't really have to spend any money with us, although that's obviously a way to do it. So we're really just looking to branch out, talk to as many people as possible, meet new eco projects. I mean, a huge thing we're doing right now is onboarding the next cohort of small scale companies that we want to help. And so we have a lot of top of the funnel supply here at Green School. We have a lot of small scale companies that are interested in working with us. So really what we have to do is sort through them and see which ones are the ones we like the most. Obviously you can't help the entire world at the same time, although that is something I would like to do. You can't. So yeah. We're trying to do everything at once.
there's actually, you just prompted another question. Actually, there's a lot of those. I mean, I speak to a lot of these small projects. Funnily enough, a couple in Bali in the last week. But give us in terms of the profile, if you can, of the type of organization that best fits, partnering with Dungbeetle and hopefully going out there and being able to sell credits, raise funding, and work within your model. What is a typical? Obviously, small.
Small scale
on the ground. Yeah.
So very small scale. Often they'll have a long background in what they're doing. Takashi has a long outstanding degree in all of these things, and now that's led him to make the 9th version of the biodigester with a 3rd version of Flow Meter, and it's finally working the way he wants it to. So there's a huge history leading up to it of fighting for it. Chaden went to Green School, found Mo, who was a Green School teacher, studied it for years, goes to local universities and studies the indigenous, native landscape of Bali. So the real authentic eco projects that we want to work with, they care so much about what they're doing that they have no time for anything else. And so it's very rare that you'll see jungler go out and try and make an aggressive sales pitch. It's very rare you'll see Takashi ever get on a stage to talk about his biojustice. And so they don't really have time for publicity and press. They don't really have time for, for lengthy sales pitches or B2B sales, because they're too busy developing the next version of the product and bettering it. Another thing we're really looking into is we're looking into very easily trackable projects, right? So the biojustice is great because it has a flow meter, so we can send that data to our systems very easily. It's very easily trackable. We don't have to go there and visit it all the time. So we're looking for projects that have that element of either it has a sensor already, or it's very easy to implement something that can track the project. So things like that. I mean, there's really no specific one model you have to fit into this box over here for us to want to work with you. But it's typically, very small scale, has a good background in it, has a history of fighting for it, already has, a number of projects, small scale projects out there. It's working, it's proven, but very early stage.
Cool.
And so that's the sort of typical model we work with. Yeah.
Cool. And I know, you're based in Bali, so predominantly or only, I imagine in the early stages, Indonesia focus in terms of your network of projects, and then internationally focused in terms of trying to attract investors, customers around your marketplace.
Yeah, so we started off here in Indonesia with Junglo and Shoko, but we also actually have a project in Wales. We managed to make the first ever NFT of a duck, and we were on a quest to make the world's first carbon negative duck eggs, with the only organic farm producer of duck eggs in the UK, Park Carrick. I actually sort of like telling this story because it proves how difficult it is to be in this business. Park Carrick, the guy who started it, Josh, quit his job. He was actually working in Luke's company before, so that's how we know him, to start a regenerative organic dog farm. It's a very rare move, but clearly he really cared about what he was doing, right? And so he started it during COVID. Feed prices sort of went up, even more so when you had the Ukraine-Russia war. Soy prices went up, and so it became very expensive to keep their flock alive. And so we included them in our little eco project cohort and said, okay, well, we're going to go out and try and create the world's first carbon negative duck eggs. And if we manage to get enough funding together, not only will they survive the winter without going bankrupt, they'll also be able to buy feed systems where they can feed their ducks in a way where they're carbon neutral. And then they could do other practices on their farm that would in fact make them measurably carbon negative. Unfortunately, in a sort of quest to make their farm financially sustainable, they sought to get an export license. And they're a very small farm, so usually you wouldn't have to do this. But they got salmonella tested, and one of the ducks had salmonella. And so the UK government's gone in and said, you've got to kill these ducks. Luckily, no one got sick. But it sort of comes to show how difficult it is to do these things. And my sympathy goes out to him. Incredibly hard situation to be in, and so we try to support them as much as possible. Luckily, it seems like there's a way out where we can keep working with them as well. But it's hard to find the just the right people at just the right time. That's a pretty unique
project anyway. But But I suppose going back to correct myself then, so you're looking at projects. It's less about the location; it's more about the profile of being a small grassroots project that's looking to, kind of reach out beyond the traditional standards and use your structure and verification processes to do that.
Correct. Yeah. It is less about location and more about the trackability aspect of it. But obviously, being in Indonesia is a huge advantage because we can go and see the eco project in action. So that is obviously our main focus. We launched our pilot with Park Carrick, one, because we saw a world where we could actually help them survive, but also because we thought it'd be really interesting to prove that we could launch internationally, right? That's a huge aspect of this business is, are you able to facilitate eco projects in multiple countries? And yes, we were. Unfortunately, it sort of went wrong, but we proved that our model works. So that was really nice. But yes.
Well, this is, the nature of the startup game is,
fail and learn,
fail and redesign. Yeah. Exactly. So,
exactly.
Freddie, I didn't have any other questions. I don't know if there was anything I didn't ask that you'd like to share. Otherwise, be great to share more about your details, where people can find out, get in contact. It's great to hear your story. Inspirational, to be honest, to hear, a kid at school launching a startup. I'm sure you're not the only one. People are getting younger and younger launching startups.
Yeah.
But yeah, great story, and wish you all the best. But yeah, if there's anything else you want to share, otherwise, where can people find out and learn more about Dungbeetle and get in contact?
Well, I think we've covered it pretty well. Anyone who's listening to this now really should go out and check Green School, just to learn a little bit about it. It's really cool. If you have kids, consider coming here one day, especially in high school. It's a totally awesome place to be, and definitely the best school I've ever been in. I've been in Danish schools, public schools, private schools. I've been in IB schools. I've tried a bit of everything. Green School by far beats them all. People can sort of, if they want to look into Dungbeetle, get in touch with me. We're on Instagram, dungbeetle.io. Find our website, dungbeetle.io. Find us on pretty much any social media platform. Find me on LinkedIn, Freddie Hedegaard. Just get in touch with me. I'm very happy to talk to pretty much anyone who's interested.
Awesome. Well, for
go find us.
Anyone listening or watching, I will put all of those links in the speaker notes. So please reach out to Freddie if you've got more questions on Dungbeetle, or if you want to invest or support. So yeah, please get in touch with Freddie. So cool, mate. It's been good to chat, and we shall keep in contact. I appreciate you taking the time in your afternoon to join the podcast. So yeah,
of course. Thank you so much for having me. Awesome.
My pleasure. Cheers.